Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into this absolutely fascinating text from 2006 by an author named Tao Wan. It's called Resurrection in Love. And honestly, what makes this piece so captivating is how it takes these deep, esoteric spiritual concepts and perfectly meshes them with modern technological metaphors. I mean, it literally reads like a spiritual instruction manual for a computer operating system. It's wild. Okay, let's just jump right in and see exactly how Tao Wan constructs this completely unique framework of the universe.
Right off the bat, the text hooks us with this pretty stark, foundational rule. Everything is moving towards death. But listen to the specific language he uses here. He explicitly calls this a program and a law. So in this view, aging and mortality, they aren't just natural accidents or biology breaking down. They're an unavoidable trajectory. It's a literal string of code that every biological system is bound by.
But, and this is where it gets interesting, Tao Wan doesn't just leave us with that grim reality. He leans way into this tech metaphor to give us a loophole. Because think about it, if the universe runs on code and strict laws, well, every law has an exception, right? And in a programmed reality, an exception is really just another piece of code waiting to be executed. Which brings us to a mind-bending way to look at our own existence.
He makes this striking comparison. Life is, quite literally, a software program. But crucially, it's not a static or doomed one. It has built-in self-repair functions. Think about it like your computer's operating system running background diagnostics, right? Fixing corrupted files, patching glitches. Our human life program has these continuous mechanisms working constantly to push back against that ultimate code of decay.
But eventually, just like any complex software trying to fix a massive system bug, like, say, aging and bodily damage, it needs an external patch. It needs an injection of new energy to keep going. And the text is super specific here. It notes that this can't just be any ordinary energy, it absolutely has to be spiritual energy. This specific spiritual input is the mandatory software update you need to keep the program running and trigger the ultimate repair.
And this leads perfectly into how Tao Wan completely redefines the whole concept of resurrection. In this framework, we aren't talking about zombies or the physical revival of a body. Resurrection is defined as consciousness returning from a dream state back to reality. It's a literal awakening. You aren't coming back from the dead. Your mind is finally logging out of the illusion and booting up into the true system.
To explain this, the source material brilliantly maps out two completely separate realms. On one hand, we've got the human realm. The text paints this as a place where our consciousness is basically just dreaming, traveling, or completely asleep. Then, contrasting that is heaven, which the author specifically calls the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world. In this setup, heaven is the actual awakened reality. Earth is just the dream simulation.
So the obvious question is, how on earth do you wake someone up from a dream that deep? Well, the text builds some serious narrative momentum here. It states that just a call is enough. I mean, think about when you're fast asleep. A loud enough voice pierces right through that dream state, doesn't it? The author argues that when a consciousness is wandering lost in the human dream, simply calling out to them is enough to make them stir.
But hold on, it can't just be any random noise or shout. The text emphasizes a very specific frequency. It claims that just by calling with love, a person in a vegetative state can awaken. The author is pitching the idea that this specific intent, calling with love, is so incredibly powerful that it can reach through the absolute deepest, most disconnected levels of physical and mental unconsciousness.
So here is the absolute core of Tao Wan's framework. Love is not just a human emotion. It's not some fleeting, warm, fuzzy feeling. It is the literal, immense, healing energy required for resurrection. It is exactly that spiritual energy, that critical software patch we talked about earlier, that you absolutely need to overwrite the program of death and wake up the sleeper.
Section 1. A mission of resurrection. So, who is this message actually meant for? According to the text, Tao Wan explicitly says he is not here to teach or preach to the general public. His target audience is highly specific and, honestly, pretty esoteric. He says he's looking for celestial beings who descended from heaven to the human world throughout history, but whose consciousness is still trapped and asleep inside the human dream. His entire mission? To locate them.
To pull off this awakening, he lays out this exact, step-by-step spiritual alignment process. First, the sleeping celestial being has to accept and feel the love being emitted. Second, they have to resonate spiritually, basically syncing up their internal frequency with that love. Third, this synchronization triggers a gradual awakening. And finally, the consciousness fully returns to the reality of heaven. It operates exactly like two devices pairing and syncing data.
Section 2. Levels of sleep.
Now, the text points out that these celestial beings wandering around the human realm aren't all in the exact same state of unawareness. It breaks them down into a strict three-tier system based on how they react to the call. Those who are only lightly asleep respond immediately to the love, experiencing it as love at first sight and eternal fidelity. Those who are deeply asleep need constant, repeated calling to stir. And the profoundly asleep, the author notes they literally have to be shaken to finally wake up.
But what about the folks who just don't react to the call at all? The source neutrally addresses this caveat. Some souls are simply out of sync. Because they've never experienced the reality of heaven, their consciousness just lacks the baseline data, or the information. They're completely indifferent to the call, because they aren't the celestial beings the author is looking for. For them, the text clearly states there is no awakening to be had.
Section 3. Advanced Cultivation and Life Structure. To understand why love is the only compatible energy for this specific group, the text introduces this esoteric theory about spiritual anatomy. It claims that the higher the level of a life form, the more perfect its life structure becomes. And here is the huge takeaway. For these advanced celestial beings, love isn't an emotion they experience. Their actual, structural anatomy is quite literally composed mainly of love.
And that perfectly wraps up the mechanics of our software metaphor. Because these beings are literally built out of love, inputting powerful love energy acts as the ultimate system restore. It directly repairs and resurrects their original life structure. You are essentially feeding the system the exact code it was originally written in, which is what finally allows them to wake up.
Section 4. Returning Home.
All of these detailed mechanics and spiritual theories really build toward this huge emotional climax. The author delivers this passionate, direct reminder: this is not your home. Your home is in heaven, which is made of love. The human realm, with all of its trials, its strict laws, its decay, is framed entirely as just a temporary travel destination. It's a heavy dream that you simply got lost in.
And the 2006 text wraps up with this incredibly powerful, urgent plea. Dear ones, wake up. It acts as this direct broadcast to those sleeping consciousnesses, urging them to accept the patch of spiritual energy, break out of the human simulation, and finally return to their true, awakened reality.
It really is a totally unique blend of software mechanics and esoteric mysticism. Whether you look at this as a strict theological manifesto or just a deeply fascinating metaphor for consciousness and connection, it definitely leaves us with something to think about. When you look at the grand software program of life laid out in this text, are you asleep or are you awakening? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this helped unpack the source material for you, and I'll see you next time.